The Newsmaker Show with Brian O'Neill on AM 1480 WLEA.
Good morning. This is Derek Belinsky on the Newsmaker Show, filling in for Brian O'Neill on this Wednesday, April 27th. Joining us today on the phone is Tom Osborne. Mr. Osborne is a former ABC News consultant and political analyst. Good morning, Tom. How's it going?
Good morning, Derek. Good to have you. Good to be with you. And
those of us who are new to the show, especially myself, can you talk a little bit about yourself? And yesterday during our brief conversation, I didn't really get where you are, but I know that you are an hour behind us.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm the president, founder of UN Report, the co-founder, co-creator, along with Faisal Khan, and I hail from ABC News, as you said, and primarily covered just about everything, as most reporters do when they start, and then eventually fell into covering the United Nations for a decade with Peter Jennings during some of the most trying and challenging times of the 90s. And since then, I've been reporting on the United Nations for the last 20 years.
We'll jump into the Pennsylvania primary here in a little bit, but as I mentioned yesterday, there were the 126,000 Democrats that kind of were turned away from the polls in Brooklyn last week. And then again, across the state, there were also, across New York State, there were maybe 1,500 complaints about voting irregularities or issues at the polls. And then I guess in Pennsylvania yesterday, it was reported that some voters were caught off guard by what they were able to see on the ballots. In your opinion, is there a way to make these types of elections more voter-friendly?
Well, I think that's one of the undercurrents of the entire campaign, there's no doubt about it. It's actually been this way for decades, and the fact is now we're exposing the little intricacies of it to the public, and they're realizing that, no, we don't have a direct democratic election. We have a republic in which we choose people to vote, and this was meant to protect us from any sort of radical overthrow, et cetera, and so on, but that's many, many years ago. I think the most important thing about this election, as it always has been, is it's the setup for the next race, and basically that would be Indiana. And that is going to be the Alamo for people like Cruz. Hillary and Trump came into this election with big victories as front runners, and now I think they've sort of, as they say, presumptive nominees. They've taken on that title. Trump swept Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Rhode Island, Connecticut, all of them, with a handful of delegates. So it looks like the question going forward, before we had this election, was will we see a sweep? And now we've seen a sweep. The other criticism was Trump has never broken 50%. Well, he broke it last night, 61%, 50%, 7%. So there's no doubt about it. Now the question is, that have we seen these two major party leaders emerge? The answer is yes. On the other side, the Democratic Sanders came in fighting for survival, and I think he's still fighting for survival, and we'll have to see what he has to say. And the Stop Trump movement, well, I think it's pretty much dead on arrival.
You mentioned Sanders, and paying attention to it myself last night, Sanders said in a statement that he's kind of in it until the last vote is counted. Is it actually time for a reality check and a possible waving of the white flag, so to speak?
I don't think the white flag is going to come out from Sanders, because I think he has to court so many hundreds and thousands of millions of people who have supported him. And it's important that he meets Hillary and Hillary meets him halfway. They have to bring those voters in to the Democratic umbrella. And it's all about appeal, and the difference between the two, Hillary and Trump, will be clear. The negatives on both sides are very high. If you look at some of the statistics that we saw coming out last night about whether the Republican Party can unify under Trump, well, it's not very encouraging. If you look at the Republican primaries, 57% would definitely vote for the Republican primary winner. 19% would probably, and 23% would never vote for Trump in November. So Cruz and Kasich are worse. So there's the setup for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. I think that we'll have to see who can chip away at those negatives.
Is it fair to say that there's more cohesion among the Democrats than there is the Republicans?
No question about it. They're bringing in both of them. Hillary, I don't think, is as middle of the road to the right as people think she is. They labeled her as a neocon. I think she picks and chooses her battles selectively, as she did as Secretary of State under Obama. But the point is, I think that she's going in with an amazing amount of unity behind her on her side. And the new people that have been brought in to vote for Sanders, I remember well the McCarthy people and so on, and the Robert Kennedy people and so on and so forth. And eventually they did come around, and I think that will happen this time.
Now, Hillary, she's about, I guess, 90% of her way to that magic number of 2383. You have to foreshadow or foresee that coming here in the very near future.
Yes, and I think now that both of them are proceeding as though they are the presumptive nominees. They will be talking to each other, and that Hillary-Trump campaign will begin to emerge. I think the worst thing you can do, and I think this has been done too often, and I object to it as a journalist, it's dangerous to condescend to Trump followers, and that's a political decision, because millions, of those people who have lost their savings and jobs and homes in 2007, they're still suffering. And so it's a big mistake to undermine the Trump followers. I think even they can be convinced to change if they need to. I mean, if you see one of the Cook brothers the other day said that he might consider voting for Hillary. So that is a huge, huge factor. I think Trump in his own little bailiwick is fine, but once he gets out there in the public and the general public, I think 64% generally say that they would not vote for him. That's a huge, huge amount. So we'll see what happens.
Joining us on the phone today on the Newsmaker show is Tom Osborne. Mr. Osborne, what would you say, or how would you react to Trump saying that Hillary wouldn't get 5% of the vote if she were a man running in this election?
Well, I think that's Donald Trump, and he thinks he's helping his vote with the women. He's got a ways to go, but I think basically last night undermines the basic Republican, let's say, orthodoxy. And it doesn't do it necessarily on women's issues or the social issues that have run the last Republican campaigns. The right-wing conservatives, some of their demands came to the forefront and on top of the page instead of a footnote. But it undermines the orthodoxy with Trump winning on trade, on taxes, and especially immigration. This is really it's been a lopsided victory in all of those primaries for him. So he is going to be the leader of the party, and that leadership requires him to determine what will be in the party platform, and he's way out from the general acceptance of the previous campaigns of the Republican Party. So the question now will be, will the party give him the nomination and give him that power? I have real serious doubts that will not end up in a huge fight, which I think we're all expecting at the convention. And we're all we journalists are kind of hoping, but, we'd like a bigger story, but I think we're going to get that.
He certainly seems to flip-flop on a lot of issues. He says he's going to change his political strategy and not attack Hillary or any of the other candidates as much. And then he also, flip-flops on the issue of whether or not the elections are rigged or we have a corrupt system or a flawed system, so to speak. But then again, he wins Pennsylvania based on the opposite of that.
Yeah, he's been playing both sides of the street, and he should. I think he wanted to surprise people with his ground game, as he always said. And we have a ground game. We didn't talk about it much. We didn't see much. But they all had the cards, and they all had the places to go, and they knew what they were doing. They were just making a big show of it. I think now what we're coming into is a sort of a turn away from those little details and all of those trivialization of the election when it comes down to this delegate or that delegate. And a lot of the major foreign affairs issues are coming up, because, and this is from my personal point of view, my professional point of view, there's a huge problem as Sanders would say, huge problem with foreign relations. There's a lot of ambassadors asking from foreign countries, the Muslim countries, of course, and in some ways, it's some of the rhetoric on his side has been dangerous to some of our basic ideals and stability. Some of the agreements that we have with other countries on torture and whether we'll intervene here or intervene there. You can't just come in and say, we are going to do this, we are going to do that without conferring with anyone. He says he has experts that have helped him on this foreign policy speech. So I'll be looking forward to hearing what he has to say about all that, I guess, today.
Live on this Wednesday, April 27th edition of the Newsmaker, I'm Derek Malinsky. Joining me on the phone today is Tom Osborne, and a former ABC political analyst and newsman.
Still here, Derek.
Excellent.
Good to be with you.
As we headed into that break there, you were hinting at Donald Trump's speech today. What can you tell us about that, or what to expect out of his comments this afternoon?
Well, I don't know what to expect. In fact, I don't think anyone does, because he hasn't, so to speak, given one of those teleprompter speeches where he's actually playing presidential. So we'll see how that works. The one thing that is certain, that in this country, trust has collapsed. We know that. Trust has collapsed in business and government and politics. And the idea that we can make America great again, well, that's fine. But now we need the details. The question is, who can better address this terrible collapse in trust, Hillary or Trump? So we'll see that. I think also some of those issues will be coming together once we cross the Indiana line, which is a huge possibility to close the door on any competition, and also California. I think my hunch is, of course, I think Trump will cross the line in California, and unless something happens, he'll be there, and we'll be able to see where this country's going to go and whether they're going to buy him in a different way. They're going to repackage him? Who knows? We'll see. I suspect they will.
I did see, and last night, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, but Donald did say he was aligning with former Indiana basketball coach Bobby Knight. Found that interesting and appealed to the sports crowd, so to speak, I guess, if you will.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you that, Derek. I mean, what do you think the impact of the Knight association is? Does it hurt Knight, or does it help Trump? I don't know.
I don't know if you can hurt Bobby Knight's character any more than he already has himself.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the two would align. I think they're both highly, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but characters nonetheless, both in their own realms. So the two, I don't know if they'll butt heads or not, but it is interesting nonetheless.
Well, also, what is interesting, Trump has not named these foreign policy experts that he's brought onto the team. And I just cannot imagine who they might be. I know they're the neocon right-wing players, but I can't imagine him bringing anyone. As he said in one interview, one fellow walked in and he said, well, good to meet you, Mr. Trump. I look forward to working with you. I was the point man on, bringing Iraq to the forefront. And Trump said, well, then excuse yourself because I'm not interested in meeting you. So I think, we get an inclination on that. He's definitely going to be hardcore on Iraq, but I don't know what that means. And I don't know whether he says he has a lot of contacts through business, but that's not the same as playing the political game in the United Nations. It's not the same on the Council on Foreign Relations. There's so many people that are just ready to pounce on, what he felt was his necessary moves to really radicalize stepping away from the Republican Party balance in foreign affairs.
How many times can he sort of play this flip-flop game, and especially in terms of his own staff, and hire one staff and then, a week or so later change, and keep going back and forth and hiring new people and new people and new people before, Americans see through that and say, enough is enough. It's time to shift our votes, so to speak.
Well, that's the issue. I think the Trump supporters want none of the above. They want no one that they've ever heard of. They want to knock the system down, and they want Trump there. They like him just like he is and leave him alone. Well, of course, that's impossible in the presidency. So he's going to have to start educating his voters. And that will come with who he chooses to serve him. And as you say, it's one person one week, another person another week. But each one of those people have played a different role. And one has played the, calm down and be more presidential. The other has done the grunt work out in the field. Those are the only two people that have risen to the top. The rest of them, I don't know. I think we'll see a lot of people in that revolving door, and it'll end up with Trump running the campaign for Trump.
And just kind of going back a little bit and stating what we already said, Trump is probably, a couple hundred short of the 1,237 Republican delegates. I guess the actual number may be about 270. And if he wins Indiana and California, even a moderate win in California, he would get that number, would he not?
Oh, absolutely. If he takes Indiana, with the 5-state sweep he just made, it's a little silly to even talk about him not being the nominee. It only infuriates the people of the base that he has for the Republican Party to keep going back and forth. Everybody says they'll support the nominee. That's kind of another way of saying, well, I may vote for someone else. On the other hand, there's a lot of delegates. I don't understand all the complexities, but there's a lot of delegates who are unbound, and we just don't know which way they're going to go. And a lot of them are frightened and made very nervous by Trump. So you know what? I know it seems like he should be the presumptive nominee, but this Republican Party is in such a disarray, and it seems to be collapsing in on itself. I certainly don't take anything for granted, not even Trump's nomination.
Now, I keep going back to this, and a lot of the other analysts that I've been watching on do as well, but do you see, especially maybe in terms of Hillary, given what you just said, this is going back to last week in the New York State primary and then again last night in Pennsylvania, is this the turning point for especially Hillary?
It is the turning point. It is definitely the turning point. And if Trump plays along, which he really wants to, it's going to be just him and her. But the problem is, and we still have this problem, of the Secretary of State's emails. I know nobody's talking about it, but why have they not wrapped it up? Why is this being held so close to the chest? Why is it that the president has been very supportive of her but has not come out and endorsed her? I just feel like the Democrats and Sanders are going to run this all the way across the board just in case. Because we know, I don't think so, but we know that on paper, Sanders can beat Trump. So they say. But anyway, what would happen if we didn't have a Hillary candidate? What would happen then? Of course, it would be chaos. So, and it could happen with these emails. Nobody knows which side the Justice Department is on here or what kind of games are being played, but they're dragging this out, and that makes me really have a lot of questions.
Tom, those are very interesting questions. And we're just about wrapping up. I got about a minute. We'll give you one last final thought.
Well, my final thought is that, boy, we sure have learned a lot about election politics, and we learned a lot about relatives and friends who turned out to be Trump voters. Who would ever think? So the die is cast. We have both sides very, very committed, and I think it's one of the most exciting elections we've had since probably the 12 nominations, the 12 votes, or 12 or so votes that Lincoln had. So we're really having a great experience here, and we're all learning how it works. And I think we're all going to change it when it's over.
Tom, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Derek. Good to hear you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. And I'm Derek Belinsky, filling in for Brian O'Neill. That's another edition of the Newsmaker Show. We'll see you right back here in 23 and a half hours. Have a good day, everybody.